The Queen's Dangerous Secret and the Duke of Buckingham, the Three Musketeers. Welcome back to the Emotive Archive. We left D'Artagnan having successfully sprung his first mousetrap, proving his cunning and earning the trust of the brave Constance Bonacieux. He has officially entered the great game of espionage. Now the stakes are raised. No longer a test, his next task is a real mission, one that comes from the highest, most vulnerable office in the kingdom, the Queen of France herself. D'Artagnan is about to be entrusted with a secret so dangerous its discovery could plunge two nations into war. His journey into the heart of the Shadow War truly begins now.
Chapter 11 of the D'Artagnan Romances, Volume 1, The Three Musketeers by Alexandre Dumas, translated by William Robson. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. In which the plot thickens. His visit to Monsieur de Tréville being paid, the pensive D'Artagnan took the longest way homeward. On what was D'Artagnan thinking that he strayed thus from his path, gazing at the stars of heaven, and sometimes sighing, sometimes smiling? He was thinking of Madame Bonacieux. For an apprentice musketeer, the young woman was almost an ideal of love. Pretty, mysterious, initiated in almost all the secrets of the court, which reflected such a charming gravity over her pleasing features, it might be surmised that she was not wholly unmoved, and this is an irresistible charm to novices in love. Moreover, D'Artagnan had delivered her from the hands of the demons who wished to search and ill-treat her, and this important service had established between them one of those sentiments of gratitude which so easily assume a more tender character. D'Artagnan already fancied himself, so rapid is the flight of our dreams upon the wings of imagination, accosted by a messenger from the young woman, who brought him some billet appointing a meeting, a gold chain, or a diamond. We have observed that young cavaliers received presents from their king without shame. Let us add that in these times of lax morality, they had no more delicacy with respect to the mistresses, and that the latter almost always left them valuable and durable remembrances, as if they essayed to conquer the fragility of their sentiments by the solidity of their gifts. Without a blush, men made their way in the world by the means of women blushing. Such as were only beautiful gave their beauty, whence without doubt comes the proverb, "The most beautiful girl in the world can only give what she has." Such as were rich gave in addition a part of their money, and a vast number of heroes of that gallant period may be cited who would neither have won their spurs in the first place, nor their battles afterward, without the purse, more or less furnished, which their mistress fastened to the saddle-bow. D'Artagnan owned nothing. Provincial diffidence, that slight varnish, the ephemeral flower, that down of the peach, had evaporated to the winds through the little orthodox counsels which the Three Musketeers gave their friend. D'Artagnan, following the strange custom of the times, considered himself at Paris as on a campaign, neither more nor less than if he had been in Flanders, Spain yonder, woman here. In each there was an enemy to contend with and contributions to be levied. But we must say at the present moment D'Artagnan was ruled by a feeling much more noble and disinterested. The mercer had said that he was rich. The young man might easily guess that with so weak a man as Monsieur Bonacieux, an interest was almost foreign to this commencement of love, which had been the consequence of it. We say almost, for the idea that a young, handsome, kind, and witty woman is at the same time rich takes nothing from the beginning of love, but on the contrary, strengthens it. There are in affluence a crowd of aristocratic cares and caprices which are highly becoming to beauty. A fine and white stocking, a silken robe, a lace kerchief, a pretty slipper on the foot, a tasty ribbon on the head do not make an ugly woman pretty, but they make a pretty woman beautiful. Without reckoning the hands, which gain by all this, the hands, among women particularly, to be beautiful must be idle. Then D'Artagnan, as the reader from whom we have not concealed the state of his fortune very well knows, D'Artagnan was not a millionaire. He hoped to become one some day, but the time which in his own mind he fixed upon for this happy change was still far distant. In the meanwhile, how disheartening to see the woman one loves long for those thousands of nothings which constitute a woman's happiness, and be unable to give her those thousands of nothings. At least, when the woman is rich and the lover is not, that which he cannot offer she offers to herself. And although it is generally with her husband's money that she procures herself this indulgence, the gratitude for it seldom reverts to him. Then D'Artagnan, disposed to become the most tender of lovers, was at the same time a very devoted friend. In the midst of his amorous projects for the mercer's wife, he did not forget his friends. The pretty Madame Bonacieux was just the woman to walk with in the Plain Saint-Denis or in the Fair of Saint-Germain, in company with Athos, Porthos, and Aramis, to whom D'Artagnan had often remarked this. Then one could enjoy charming little dinners, where one touches on one side the hand of a friend, and on the other the foot of a mistress. Besides, on pressing occasions in extreme difficulties, D'Artagnan would become the preserver of his friends. And M. Bonacieux, whom D'Artagnan had pushed into the hands of the officers, denying him aloud, although he had promised in a whisper to save him, we are compelled to admit to our readers that D'Artagnan thought nothing about him in any way, or that if he did think of him, it was only to say to himself that he was very well where he was, wherever it might be. Love is the most selfish of all the passions. Let our readers reassure themselves. If D'Artagnan forgets his host, or appears to forget him, under the pretense of not knowing where he has been carried, we will not forget him, and we know where he is. But for the moment, let us do as did the amorous Gascon. We will see after the worthy mercer later. D'Artagnan, reflecting on his future amours, addressing himself to the beautiful night and smiling at the stars, ascended the Rue Cherish-Midi, or Chase-Midi, as it was then called. As he found himself in the quarter in which Aramis lived, he took it into his head to pay his friend a visit, in order to explain the motives which had led him to send Planchet with a request that he would come instantly to the mousetrap. Now, if Aramis had been at home when Planchet came to his abode, he had doubtless hastened to the Rue des Fossoyeurs, and finding nobody there but his other two companions, perhaps, they would not be able to conceive what all this meant. This mystery required an explanation. At least so D'Artagnan declared to himself. He likewise thought this was an opportunity for talking about pretty little Madame Bonacieux, of whom his head, if not his heart, was already full. We must never look for discretion in first love. First love is accompanied by such excessive joy that unless the joy be allowed to overflow, it will stifle you. Paris for 2 hours past had been dark and seemed a desert. 11 o'clock sounded from all the clocks of the Faubourg Saint-Germain. It was delightful weather. D'Artagnan was passing along a lane on the spot where the Rue d'Assas is now situated, breathing the balmy emanations which were borne upon the wind from the Rue de Vaugirard, and which arose from the gardens refreshed by the dews of evening and the breeze of night. From a distance resounded, deadened, however, by good shutters, the songs of the tipplers, enjoying themselves in the cabarets scattered along the plain. Arrived at the end of the lane, D'Artagnan turned to the left. The house in which Aramis dwelt was situated between the Rue Cassette and the Rue Servandoni. D'Artagnan had just passed the Rue Cassette, and already perceived the door of his friend's house, shaded by a mass of sycamores and clematis, which formed a vast arch opposite the front of it, when he perceived something like a shadow issuing from the Rue Servandoni. This was something enveloped in a cloak, and D'Artagnan at first believed it was a man, but by the smallness of the form, the hesitation of the walk, and the indecision of the step, he soon discovered that it was a woman. Further, this woman, as if not certain of the house she was seeking, lifted up her eyes to look around her, stopped, went backward, and then returned again. D'Artagnan was perplexed. "Shall I go and offer her my services?" thought he. "By her step she must be young. Perhaps she is pretty. Oh, yes, but a woman who wanders in the streets at this hour only ventures out to meet her lover. If I should disturb a rendezvous, that would not be the best means of commencing an acquaintance." Meantime, the young woman continued to advance, counting the houses and windows. This was neither long nor difficult. There were but 3 hotels in this part of the street, and only 2 windows looking toward the road, one of which was in a pavilion parallel to that which Aramis occupied, the other belonging to Aramis himself. "Pardieu!" said D'Artagnan to himself, to whose mind the niece of the theologian reverted. "Pardieu, it would be droll if this belated dove should be in search of our friend's house. But, on my soul, it looks so. Ah, my dear Aramis, this time I shall find you out." And D'Artagnan, making himself as small as he could, concealed himself in the darkest side of the street, near a stone bench placed at the back of a niche. The young woman continued to advance, and in addition to the lightness of her step, which had betrayed her, she emitted a little cough, which denoted a sweet voice. D'Artagnan believed this cough to be a signal. Nevertheless, whether the cough had been answered by a similar signal which had fixed the irresolution of the nocturnal seeker, or whether without this aid she saw that she had arrived at the end of her journey, she resolutely drew near to Aramis's shutter, and tapped, at 3 equal intervals, with her bent finger. "This is all very fine, dear Aramis," murmured D'Artagnan. "Ah, Monsieur Hypocrite, I understand how you study theology." The 3 blows were scarcely struck when the inside blind was opened, and a light appeared through the panes of the outside shutter. "Aha!" said the listener. "Not through doors, but through windows. Ah, this visit was expected. We shall see the windows open, and the lady enter by escalade. Very pretty." But to the great astonishment of D'Artagnan, the shutter remained closed. Still more, the light which had shone for an instant disappeared, and all was again in obscurity. D'Artagnan thought this could not last long, and continued to look with all his eyes and listen with all his ears. He was right. At the end of some seconds, 2 sharp taps were heard inside. The young woman in the street replied by a single tap, and the shutter was opened a little way. It may be judged whether D'Artagnan looked or listened with avidity. Unfortunately, the light had been removed into another chamber, but the eyes of the young man were accustomed to the night. Besides, the eyes of the Gascons have, as it is asserted, like those of cats, the faculty of seeing in the dark. D'Artagnan then saw that the young woman took from her pocket a white object, which she unfolded quickly, and which took the form of a handkerchief. She made her interlocutor observe the corner of this unfolded object. This immediately recalled to D'Artagnan's mind the handkerchief which he had found at the feet of Madame Bonacieux, which had reminded him of that which he had dragged from under the feet of Aramis. What the devil could the handkerchief signify? Placed where he was, D'Artagnan could not perceive the face of Aramis. We say Aramis because the young man entertained no doubt that it was his friend who held this dialogue from the interior with the lady of the exterior. Curiosity prevailed over prudence, and profiting by the preoccupation into which the sight of the handkerchief appeared to have plunged the 2 personages now on the scene, he stole from his hiding-place, and quick as lightning, but stepping with utmost caution, he ran and placed himself close to the angle of the wall, from which his eye could pierce the interior of Aramis's room. Upon gaining this advantage, D'Artagnan was near uttering a cry of surprise. It was not Aramis who was conversing with the nocturnal visitor, it was a woman. D'Artagnan, however, could only see enough to recognize the form of her vestments, not enough to distinguish her features. At the same instant, the woman inside drew a second handkerchief from her pocket, and exchanged it for that which had just been shown to her. Then some words were spoken by the 2 women, and at length the shutter closed. The woman who was outside the window turned round and passed within 4 steps of D'Artagnan, pulling down the hood of her mantle, but the precaution was too late. D'Artagnan had already recognized Madame Bonacieux. Madame Bonacieux? The suspicion that it was she had crossed the mind of D'Artagnan when she drew the handkerchief from her pocket. But what probability was there that Madame Bonacieux, who had sent for Monsieur Laporte in order to be reconducted to the Louvre, should be running about the streets of Paris at 11:30 at night, at the risk of being abducted a second time? This must be, then, an affair of importance. And what is the most important affair to a woman of 25? Love. But was it on her own account or on the account of another that she exposed herself to such hazards? This was a question the young man asked himself, whom the demon of jealousy already gnawed, being in heart neither more or less than an accepted lover. There was a very simple means of satisfying himself whither Madame Bonacieux was going, that was to follow her. This method was so simple that D'Artagnan employed it quite naturally and instinctively. But at the sight of the young man, who detached himself from the wall like a statue walking from its niche, and at the noise of the steps which she heard resound behind her, Madame Bonacieux uttered a little cry and fled. D'Artagnan ran after her. It was not difficult for him to overtake a woman embarrassed with her cloak. He came up with her before she had traversed 1/3 of the street. The unfortunate woman was exhausted, not by fatigue but by terror, and when D'Artagnan placed his hand upon her shoulder, she sank upon one knee, crying in a choking voice, "Kill me, if you please. You shall know nothing." D'Artagnan raised her by passing his arm round her waist, but as he felt by her weight she was on the point of fainting, he made haste to reassure her by protestations of devotedness. These protestations were nothing for Madame Bonacieux, for such protestations may be made with the worst intentions in the world. But the voice was all. Madame Bonacieux thought she recognized the sound of that voice. She reopened her eyes, cast a quick glance upon the man who had terrified her so, and at once perceiving it was D'Artagnan, she uttered a cry of joy. "Oh, it is you! It is you! Thank God! Thank God!" "Yes, it is I," said D'Artagnan. "It is I, whom God has sent to watch over you." "Was it with that intention you followed me?" asked the young woman with a coquettish smile, whose somewhat bantering character resumed its influence, and with whom all fear had disappeared from the moment in which she recognized a friend in one she had taken for an enemy. "No," said D'Artagnan. "No, I confess it. It was chance that threw me in your way. I saw a woman knocking at the window of one of my friends." "One of your friends?" interrupted Madame Bonacieux. "Without doubt. Aramis is one of my best friends." "Aramis? Who is he?" Come, come, you won't tell me you don't know Aramis?" "This is the first time I ever heard his name pronounced." "It is the first time, then, that you ever went to that house?" "Undoubtedly." "And you did not know that it was inhabited by a young man?" "No." "By a Musketeer?" "No, indeed." "It was not he, then, you came to seek?" "Not the least in the world. Besides, you must have seen that the person to whom I spoke was a woman." "That is true, but this woman is a friend of Aramis." "I know nothing of that." "Since she lodges with him?" "That does not concern me." "But who is she?" "Oh, that is not my secret." "My dear Madame Bonacieux, you are charming, but at the same time you are one of the most mysterious women." "Do I lose by that?" "No, you are on the contrary adorable." "Give me your arm, then." "Most willingly. And now?" "Now, escort me." "Where?" "Where I am going." "But where are you going?" "You will see, because you will leave me at the door." "Shall I wait for you?" That will be useless. You will return alone, then? Perhaps yes, perhaps no. But will the person who shall accompany you afterward be a man or a woman? I don't know yet. But I will know it. How so? I will wait until you come out. In that case, adieu. Why so? I do not want you. But you have claimed the aid of a gentleman, not the watchfulness of a spy. The word is rather hard. How are they called who follow others in spite of them? They are indiscreet. The word is too mild. Well, madame, I perceive I must do as you wish. Why did you deprive yourself of the merit of doing so at once? Is there no merit in repentance? And do you really repent? I know nothing about it myself, but what I know is that I promise to do all you wish, if you allow me to accompany you where you are going. And you will leave me then? Yes. Without waiting for my coming out again? Yes. Word of honor. By the faith of a gentleman, take my arm and let us go. D'Artagnan offered his arm to Madame Bonacieux, who willingly took it, half laughing, half trembling, and both gained the top of Rue de la Harpe. Arriving there, the young woman seemed to hesitate, as she had done before in the Rue Vaugirard. She seemed, however, by certain signs to recognize a door, and approaching the door. "And now, monsieur," said she, "it is here I have business. 1,000 thanks for your honorable company, which has saved me from all the dangers to which, alone, I was exposed. But the moment is come to keep your word. I have reached my destination." "And you will have nothing to fear on your return?" "I shall have nothing to fear but robbers." "And that is nothing?" "What could they take from me? I have not a penny about me." "You forget that beautiful handkerchief with the coat of arms." "Which?" "That which I found at your feet and replaced in your pocket." "Hold your tongue, imprudent man! Do you wish to destroy me?" "You see very plainly that there is still danger for you, since a single word makes you tremble, and you confess that if that word were heard you would be ruined. Come, come, madame!" cried D'Artagnan, seizing her hands and surveying her with an ardent glance. "Come, be more generous. Confide in me. Have you not read in my eyes that there is nothing but devotion and sympathy in my heart?" "Yes," replied Madame Bonacieux. "Therefore ask my own secrets, and I will reveal them to you. But those of others, that is quite another thing." "Very well," said D'Artagnan. "I shall discover them, as these secrets may have an influence over your life. These secrets must become mine." "Beware of what you do!" cried the young woman in a manner so serious as to make D'Artagnan start in spite of himself. "Oh, meddle in nothing which concerns me. Do not seek to assist me in that which I am accomplishing. This I ask of you in the name of the interest with which I inspire you, in the name of the service you have rendered me, and which I never shall forget while I have life. Rather, place faith in what I tell you. Have no more concern about me. I exist no longer for you any more than if you had never seen me." "Must Aramis do as much as I, madame?" said D'Artagnan, deeply piqued. "This is the second or third time, monsieur, that you have repeated that name, and yet I have told you that I do not know him." "You do not know the man at whose shutters you have just knocked? Indeed, madame, you believe me too credulous." "Confess that it is for the sake of making me talk that you invent this story and create this personage." "I invent nothing, madame. I create nothing. I only speak that exact truth." And you say that one of your friends lives in that house? I say so, and I repeat it for the third time. That house is one inhabited by my friend, and that friend is Aramis. All this will be cleared up at a later period, murmured the young woman. No, monsieur, be silent. If you could but see my heart, said D'Artagnan, you would read there so much curiosity that you would pity me, and so much love that you would instantly satisfy my curiosity. We have nothing to fear from those who love us. You speak very suddenly of love, monsieur, said the young woman, shaking her head. That is because love has come suddenly upon me, and for the first time, and because I am only 20. The young woman looked at him furtively. Listen, I am already upon the scent, resumed D'Artagnan. About 3 months ago, I was near having a duel with Aramis concerning a handkerchief resembling the one you showed to the woman in his house, for a handkerchief marked in the same manner, I am sure. Monsieur, said the young woman, you weary me very much, I assure you, with your questions. But you, madame, prudent as you are, think if you were to be arrested with that handkerchief, and that handkerchief were to be seized, would you not be compromised? In what way? The initials are only mine, C.B., Constance Bonacieux. Or Camille de Bois Tracy. Silence, monsieur! Once again, silence! Ah, since the dangers I incur on my own account cannot stop you, think of those you may yourself run. Me? Yes, there is peril of imprisonment, risk of life in knowing me. Then I will not leave you. Monsieur, said the young woman, supplicating him and clasping her hands together. Monsieur, in the name of heaven, by the honor of a soldier, by the courtesy of a gentleman, depart. There, midnight sounds. That is the hour when I am expected. Madame, said the young man, bowing, I can refuse nothing asked of me thus. Be content, I will depart. But you will not follow me? You will not watch me? I will return home instantly. I was quite sure you were a good and brave young man, said Madame Bonacieux, holding out her hand to him, and placing the other upon the knocker of a little door almost hidden in the wall. D'Artagnan seized the hand held out to him and kissed it ardently. Ah, I wish I had never seen you, cried D'Artagnan with that ingenuous roughness which women often prefer to the affectations of politeness, because it betrays the depth of the thought and proves that feeling prevails over reason. Well, resumed Madame Bonacieux, in a voice almost caressing and pressing the hand of D'Artagnan, who had not relinquished hers, well, I will not say as much as you do. What is lost for today may not be lost forever. Who knows, when I shall be at liberty, that I may not satisfy your curiosity. And you will make the same promise to my love? cried D'Artagnan, beside himself with joy. Oh, as to that, I do not engage myself. That depends upon the sentiments with which you may inspire me. Then today, madame. Oh, today, I am no further than gratitude. Ah, you are too charming, said D'Artagnan sorrowfully. And you abuse my love. No, I use your generosity, that's all. But be of good cheer. With certain people, everything comes round. Oh, you render me the happiest of men. Do not forget this evening. Do not forget that promise. Be satisfied. In the proper time and place, I will remember everything. Now then, go, go. In the name of heaven, I was expected at sharp midnight, and I am late. By 5 minutes. Yes, but in certain circumstances, 5 minutes are 5 ages. When one loves? Well, and who told you I had no affair with a lover?" "It is a man, then, who expects you!" cried D'Artagnan. "A man?" "The discussion is going to begin again?" said Mme. Bonacieux, with a half-smile, which was not exempt from a tinge of impatience. "No, no. I go. I depart. I believe in you, and I would have all the merit of my devotion, even if that devotion were stupidity. Adieu, madame. Adieu." And as if he only felt strength to detach himself by a violent effort from the hand he held, he sprang away running, while Mme. Bonacieux knocked, as at the shutter, 3 light and regular taps. When he had gained the angle of the street, he turned. The door had been opened and shut again. The mercer's pretty wife had disappeared. D'Artagnan pursued his way. He had given his word not to watch Mme. Bonacieux, and if his life had depended upon the spot to which she was going, or upon the person who should accompany her, D'Artagnan would have returned home, since he had so promised. 5 minutes later he was in the Rue des Fossoyeurs. "Poor Athos," said he. "He will never guess what all this means. He will have fallen asleep waiting for me, or else he will have returned home, where he will have learned that a woman had been there." "A woman with Athos, after all," continued D'Artagnan. "There was certainly one with Aramis. All this is very strange, and I am curious to know how it will end." "Badly, monsieur, badly," replied a voice which the young man recognized as that of Planchet. For, soliloquizing aloud, as very preoccupied people do, he had entered the alley, at the end of which were the stairs which led to his chamber. "How badly? What do you mean by that, you idiot?" asked D'Artagnan. "What has happened?" "All sorts of misfortunes." "What?" "In the first place, Monsieur Athos is arrested." "Arrested? Athos arrested? What for?" "He was found in your lodging. They took him for you." "And by whom was he arrested?" "By guards brought by the men in black, whom you put to flight." "Why did he not tell them his name? Why did he not tell them he knew nothing about this whole affair?" "He took care not to do so, monsieur. On the contrary, he came up to me and said, 'It is your master that needs his liberty at this moment, and not I, since he knows everything and I know nothing. They will believe he is arrested, and that will give him time. In 3 days I will tell them who I am, and they cannot fail to let me go.'" "Brave Athos! Noble heart!" murmured D'Artagnan. "I know him well there. And what did the officers do?" "Four conveyed him away, I don't know where, to the Bastille or Fort l'Evêque. 2 remained with the men in black, who rummaged every place and took all the papers. The last 2 mounted guard at the door during this examination. Then, when all was over, they went away, leaving the house empty and exposed." "And Porthos and Aramis?" "I could not find them. They did not come." "But they may come any moment, for you left word that I awaited them." "Yes, monsieur." "Well, don't budge then. If they come, tell them what has happened. Let them wait for me at the Pomme du Pin. Here it would be dangerous. The house may be watched. I will run to Monsieur de Tréville and tell them all this, and will meet them there." "Very well, monsieur," said Planchet. "But you will remain? You are not afraid?" said D'Artagnan, coming back to recommend courage to his lackey. "Be easy, monsieur," said Planchet. "You do not know me yet. I am brave when I set about it. It is all in beginning. Besides, I am a Picard." "Then it is understood," said D'Artagnan. "You would rather be killed than desert your post?" "Yes, monsieur, and there is nothing I would not do to prove to monsieur that I am attached to him." "Good," said D'Artagnan to himself. "It appears that the method I have adopted with this boy is decidedly the best. I shall use it again upon occasion." and with all the swiftness of his legs. Already a little fatigued, however, with the perambulations of the day, D'Artagnan directed his course toward Monsieur de Tréville's. Monsieur de Tréville was not at his hotel. His company was on guard at the Louvre. He was at the Louvre with his company. It was necessary to reach Monsieur de Tréville. It was important that he should be informed of what was passing. D'Artagnan resolved to try and enter the Louvre. His costume of guardsman in the company of Monsieur Dessessart ought to be his passport. He therefore went down the Rue de Petit Augustin and came up to the quay in order to take the new bridge. He had at first an idea of crossing by the ferry, but on gaining the riverside he had mechanically put his hand into his pocket, and perceiving that he had not wherewithal to pay his passage. As he gained the top of the Rue Guénégaud, he saw two persons coming out of the Rue Dauphine, whose appearance very much struck him. Of the two persons who composed this group, one was a man and the other a woman. The woman had the outline of Madame Bonacieux. The man resembled Aramis so much as to be mistaken for him. Besides, the woman wore that black mantle which D'Artagnan could still see outlined on the shutter of the Rue de Vaugirard and on the door of the Rue de la Harpe. Still further, the man wore the uniform of a Musketeer. The woman's hood was pulled down, and the man held a handkerchief to his face. Both, as this double precaution indicated, had an interest in not being recognized. They took the bridge. That was D'Artagnan's road, and as he was going to the Louvre, D'Artagnan followed them. He had not gone 20 steps before he became convinced that the woman was really Madame Bonacieux and that the man was Aramis. He felt at that instant all the suspicions of jealousy agitating his heart. He felt himself doubly betrayed by his friend and by her whom he already loved like a mistress. Madame Bonacieux had declared to him by all the gods that she did not know Aramis, and a quarter of an hour after having made this assertion he found her hanging on the arm of Aramis. D'Artagnan did not reflect that he had only known the mercer's pretty wife for 3 hours, that she owed him nothing but a little gratitude for having delivered her from the men in black, who wished to carry her off, and that she had promised him nothing. He considered himself an outraged, betrayed, and ridiculed lover. Blood and anger mounted to his face. He was resolved to unravel the mystery. The young man and young woman perceived they were watched and redoubled their speed. D'Artagnan determined upon his course. He passed them, then returned so as to meet them exactly before the Samaritaine, which was illuminated by a lamp which threw its light over all that part of the bridge. D'Artagnan stopped before them, and they stopped before him. "What do you want, monsieur?" demanded the Musketeer, recoiling a step and with a foreign accent, which proved to D'Artagnan that he was deceived in one of his conjectures. "It is not Aramis!" cried he. "No, monsieur, it is not Aramis, and by your exclamation I perceive you have mistaken me for another, and pardon you." "You pardon me?" cried D'Artagnan. "Yes," replied the stranger. "Allow me, then, to pass on, since it is not with me you have anything to do." "You are right, monsieur. It is not with you that I have anything to do. It is with Madame." "With Madame? You do not know her," replied the stranger. "You are deceived, monsieur. I know her very well," said Madame Bonacieux in a tone of reproach. "Monsieur, I had your promise as a soldier and your word as a gentleman. I hope to be able to rely upon that." "And I, madame," said D'Artagnan, embarrassed, "you promised me—" "Take my arm, madame," said the stranger, "and let us continue our way." D'Artagnan, however, stupefied, cast down, annihilated by all that happened, stood with crossed arms before the Musketeer and Madame Bonacieux. The Musketeer advanced 2 steps and pushed D'Artagnan aside with his hand. D'Artagnan made a spring backward and drew his sword. At the same time, and with the rapidity of lightning, the stranger drew his. "In the name of heaven, my lord!" cried Madame Bonacieux, throwing herself between the combatants and seizing the swords with her hands. "My lord!" cried D'Artagnan, enlightened by a sudden idea. "My lord! "Pardon me, monsieur, but you are not—"
"My lord the Duke of Buckingham,"
said Madame Bonacieux in an undertone.
"and now you may ruin us all."
"My lord, madame, I ask 100 pardons, but I love her, my lord, and was jealous. You know what it is to love, my lord. Pardon me, and then tell me how I can risk my life to serve your grace." "You are a brave young man," said Buckingham, holding out his hand to D'Artagnan, who pressed it respectfully. "You offer me your services. With the same frankness I accept them. Follow us at a distance of 20 paces, as far as the Louvre, and if anyone watches us, slay him." D'Artagnan placed his naked sword under his arm, allowed the Duke and Mademoiselle Bonacieux to take 20 steps ahead, and then followed them, ready to execute the instructions of the noble and elegant minister of Charles I. Fortunately, he had no opportunity to give the Duke this proof of his devotion, and the young woman and the handsome Musketeer entered the Louvre by the wicket of the Echelle without any interference. As for D'Artagnan, he immediately repaired to the cabaret of the Pont de Pin, where he found Porthos and Aramis awaiting him. Without giving them any explanation of the alarm and inconvenience he had caused them, he told them that he had terminated the affair alone, in which he had for a moment believed he should need their assistance. Meanwhile, carried away as we are by our narrative, we must leave our three friends to themselves and follow the Duke of Buckingham and his guide through the labyrinths of the Louvre. End of chapter 11. Recording by John Van Stan, Savannah, Georgia. Chapter 12 of the D'Artagnan Romances, Volume 1, The Three Musketeers by Alexandre Dumas, translated by William Robson. This Sleepervox recording is in the public domain. George Villiers, Duke of Buckingham. Madame Bonacieux and the Duke entered the Louvre without difficulty. Madame Bonacieux was known to belong to the Queen. The Duke wore the uniform of the Musketeers of Monsieur de Tréville, who, as we have said, were that evening on guard. Besides, Germain was in the interests of the Queen, and if anything should happen, Madame Bonacieux would be accused of having introduced her lover into the Louvre. That was all. She took the risk upon herself. Her reputation would be lost, it is true, but of what value in the world was the reputation of the little wife of a mercer? Once within the interior of the court, the Duke and the young woman followed the wall for the space of about 25 steps. This space passed, Madame Bonacieux pushed a little servant's door open by day, but generally closed at night. The door yielded. Both entered and found themselves in darkness, but Madame Bonacieux was acquainted with all the turnings and windings of this part of the Louvre, appropriated for the people of the household. She closed the door after her, took the Duke by the hand, and after a few experimental steps, grasped a balustrade, put her foot upon the bottom step, and began to ascend the staircase. The Duke counted 2 stories. She then turned to the right, followed the course of a long corridor, descended a flight, went a few steps farther, introduced a key into a lock, opened a door, and pushed the Duke into an apartment lighted only by a lamp, saying,
"Remain here, my Lord Duke. Someone will come."
She then went out by the same door, which she locked, so that the Duke found himself literally a prisoner. Nevertheless, isolated as he was, we must say that the Duke of Buckingham did not experience an instant of fear. One of the salient points of his character was the search for adventures and a love of romance. Brave, rash, and enterprising, this was not the first time he had risked his life in such attempts. He had learned that the pretended message from Anne of Austria, upon the faith of which he had come to Paris, was a snare, but instead of regaining England, he had, abusing the position in which he had been placed, declared to the Queen that he would not depart without seeing her. The Queen had at first positively refused, but at length became afraid that the Duke, if exasperated, would commit some folly. She had already decided upon seeing him and urging his immediate departure when, on the very evening of coming to this decision, Madame Bonacieux, who was charged with going to fetch the Duke and conducting him to the Louvre, was abducted. For 2 days no one knew what had become of her, and everything remained in suspense. But once free and placed in communication with Laporte, matters resumed their course, and she accomplished the perilous enterprise which, but for her arrest, would have been executed 3 days earlier. Buckingham, left alone, walked toward a mirror. His musketeer's uniform became him marvelously. At 35, which was then his age, he passed, with just title, for the handsomest gentleman and the most elegant cavalier of France or England. The favorite of 2 kings, immensely rich, all-powerful in a kingdom which he disordered at his fancy and calmed again at his caprice, George Villiers, Duke of Buckingham, had lived one of those fabulous existences which survive in the course of centuries to astonish posterity. Sure of himself, convinced of his own power, certain that the laws which rule other men could not reach him, he went straight to the object he aimed at, even were this object so elevated and so dazzling that it would have been madness for any other even to have contemplated it. It was thus he had succeeded in approaching several times the beautiful and proud Anne of Austria, and in making himself loved by dazzling her. George Villiers put himself before the glass, as we have said, restored the undulations to his beautiful hair, which the weight of his hat had disordered, twisted his mustache, and his heart swelling with joy, happy and proud at being near the moment he had so longed for, he smiled upon himself with pride and hope. At this moment a door concealed in the tapestry opened, and a woman appeared. Buckingham saw this apparition in the glass. He uttered a cry. It was the Queen. Anne of Austria was then 26 or 27 years of age. That is to say, she was in the full splendor of her beauty. Her carriage was that of a queen or a goddess. Her eyes, which cast the brilliancy of emeralds, were perfectly beautiful, and yet were at the same time full of sweetness and majesty. Her mouth was small and rosy, and although her underlip, like that of all princes of the House of Austria, protruded slightly beyond the other, it was eminently lovely in its smile, but as profoundly disdainful in its contempt. Her skin was admired for its velvety softness. Her hands and arms were of surpassing beauty, all the poets of the time singing them as incomparable. Lastly, her hair, which from being light in her youth had become chestnut, and which she wore curled very plainly and with much powder, admirably set off her face, in which the most rigid critic could only have desired a little less rouge, and the most fastidious sculptor a little more fineness in the nose. Buckingham remained for a moment dazzled. Never had Anne of Austria appeared to him so beautiful, amid balls, fêtes, or carousals, and as she appeared to him at this moment, dressed in a simple robe of white satin and accompanied by Donna Estefania, the only one of her Spanish women who had not been driven from her by the jealousy of the king or by the persecutions of Richelieu. Anne of Austria took 2 steps forward. Buckingham threw himself at her feet, and before the queen could prevent him, kissed the hem of her robe.
"Duke, you already know that it is not I who caused you to be written to."
Yes, yes, madame, yes, your majesty," cried the duke. "I know that I must have been mad, senseless, to believe that snow would become animated or marble warm. But what then? They who love believe easily in love. Besides, I have lost nothing by this journey because I see you."
"Yes," replied Anne, "but you know why and how I see you, because, insensible to all my sufferings, you persist in remaining in a city where, by remaining, you run the risk of your life, and make me run the risk of my honor. I see you to tell you that everything separates us, the depths of the sea, the enmity of kingdoms, the sanctity of vows. It is sacrilege to struggle against so many things, my lord. In short, I see you to tell you that we must never see each other again."
"Speak on, madame, speak on, queen," said Buckingham. "The sweetness of your voice covers the harshness of your words. You talk of sacrilege. Why, the sacrilege is the separation of 2 hearts formed by God for each other."
"My lord," cried the queen, "you forget that I have never said that I love you."
"But you have never told me that you did not love me, and truly, to speak such words to me would be, on the part of your majesty, too great an ingratitude. For tell me,
Where can you find a love like mine? A love which neither time, nor absence, nor despair can extinguish. A love which contents itself with a lost ribbon, a stray look, or a chance word. It is now 3 years, madame, since I saw you for the first time, and during those 3 years I have loved you thus. Shall I tell you each ornament of your toilet? Mark, I see you now. You were seated upon cushions in the Spanish fashion. You wore a robe of green satin embroidered with gold and silver, hanging sleeves knotted upon your beautiful arms, those lovely arms, with large diamonds. You wore a close ruff, a small cap upon your head of the same color as your robe, and in that cap a heron's feather. Hold, I shut my eyes, and I can see you as you were then. I open them again, and I see what you are now, 100 times more beautiful." "What folly!" murmured Anne of Austria, who had not the courage to find fault with the duke for having so well preserved her portrait in his heart. "What folly to feed a useless passion with such remembrances!" "And upon what, then, must I live? I have nothing but memory. It is my happiness, my treasure, my hope. Every time I see you is a fresh diamond, which I enclose in the casket of my heart. This is the 4th which you have let fall, and I have picked up. For in 3 years, madame, I have only seen you 4 times. The first, which I have described to you. The second, at the mansion of Madame de Chevreuse. The third, in the gardens of Amiens." "Duke," said the queen, blushing, "never speak of that evening." "Oh, let us speak of it. On the contrary, let us speak of it. That is the most happy and brilliant evening of my life. You remember what a beautiful night it was. How soft and perfumed was the air. How lovely the blue heavens and star-enameled sky. Ah, then, madame, I was able for 1 instant to be alone with you. Then you were about to tell me all, the isolation of your life, the griefs of your heart. You leaned upon my arm, upon this, madame. I felt in bending my head towards you, your beautiful hair touch my cheek, and every time that it touched me I trembled from head to foot. Oh, queen, queen, you do not know what felicity from heaven, what joys from paradise are comprised in a moment like that. Take my wealth, my fortune, my glory, all the days I have to live, for such an instant, for a night like that. For that night, madame, that night you loved me. I will swear it." "My lord, yes. It is possible that the influence of the place, the charm of the beautiful evening, the fascination of your look, the 1,000 circumstances, in short, which sometimes unite to destroy a woman, were grouped around me on that fatal evening. But, my lord, you saw the queen come to the aid of the woman who faltered. At the first word you dared to utter, at the first freedom to which I had to reply, I called for help." Yes, that is true. And any other love but mine would have sunk beneath this ordeal. But my love came out from it more ardent and more eternal. You believed that you would fly from me by returning to Paris. You believed that I would not dare to quit the treasure over which my master had charged me to watch. What to me were all the treasures in the world, or all the kings of the earth? 8 days after, I was back again, madame. That time you had nothing to say to me. I had risked my life and favor to see you but for a second. I did not even touch your hand, and you pardoned me on seeing me so submissive and so repentant." "Yes, but calumny seized upon all those follies in which I took no part, as you well know, my lord. The king, excited by the cardinal, made a terrible clamor. Madame de Verney was driven from me. Putange was exiled. Madame de Chevreuse fell into disgrace. And when you wished to come back as ambassador to France, the king himself, remember, my lord, the king himself opposed it."
"Yes, and France is about to pay for her king's refusal with a war. I am not allowed to see you, madame, but you shall every day hear of me. What object, think you, have this expedition to Ré and this league with the Protestants of La Rochelle, which I am projecting? The pleasure of seeing you. I have no hope of penetrating, sword in hand, to Paris. I know that well, but this war may bring round a peace. This peace will require a negotiator. That negotiator will be me. They will not dare to refuse me then, and I will return to Paris, and will see you again, and will be happy for an instant. Thousands of men, it is true, will have to pay for my happiness with their lives. But what is that to me, provided I see you again? All this is perhaps folly, perhaps insanity, but tell me, what woman has a lover more truly in love? What queen a servant more ardent?"
My lord, you invoke in your defense things which accuse you more strongly. All these proofs of love which you would give me are almost crimes."
"Because you do not love me, madame. If you loved me, you would view all this otherwise. If you loved me, that would be too great a happiness, and I should run mad. Madame de Chevreuse was less cruel than you. Holland loved her, and she responded to his love."
"Madame de Chevreuse was not queen,"
murmured Anne of Austria, overcome in spite of herself by the expression of so profound a passion.
"You would love me, then, if you were not queen? Madame, say that you would love me then. I can believe that it is the dignity of your rank alone which makes you cruel to me. I can believe that. Had you been Madame de Chevreuse, poor Buckingham might have hoped. Thanks for those sweet words. Oh, my beautiful sovereign, 100 times thanks." "Oh, my lord, you have ill understood, wrongly interpreted. I did not mean to say—"
"Silence, silence!" cried the duke. "If I am happy in error, do not have the cruelty to lift me from it. You have told me yourself, madame, that I have been drawn into a snare. I, perhaps, may leave my life in it, for although it may be strange, I have for some time had a presentiment that I should shortly die." And the duke smiled, with a smile at once sad and charming.
"Oh, my God!"
cried Anne of Austria, with an accent of terror which proved how much greater an interest she took in the duke than she ventured to tell. "I do not tell you this, madame, to terrify you. No, it is even ridiculous for me to name it to you, and believe me, I take no heed of such dreams. But the words you have just spoken, the hope you have almost given me, will have richly paid all, were it my life."
"Oh, but I,"
said Anne,
"I also, Duke, have had presentiments. I also have had dreams. I dreamed that I saw you lying, bleeding, wounded."
"In the left side, was it not? And with a knife?" interrupted Buckingham.
"Yes, it was so, my lord. It was so, in the left side and with a knife. Who can possibly have told you I had had that dream? I have imparted it to no one but my God, and that in my prayers."
"I ask for no more. You love me, madame. It is enough."
"I love you? I?"
"Yes, yes. Would God send the same dreams to you as to me if you did not love me? Should we have had the same presentiments if our existences did not touch at the heart? You love me, my beautiful queen, and you will weep for me."
"Oh, my God, my God!"
cried Anne of Austria.
This is more than I can bear. In the name of heaven, Duke, leave me. Go. I do not know whether I love you or love you not, but what I know is that I will not be perjured. Take pity on me, then, and go. Oh, if you are stuck in France, if you die in France, if I could imagine that your love for me was the cause of your death, I could not console myself. I should run mad. Depart, then, depart. I implore you. Oh, how beautiful you are thus. Oh, how I love you, said Buckingham. Go, go, I implore you, and return hereafter. Come back as ambassador, come back as minister, come back surrounded with guards who will defend you, with servants who will watch over you, and then I shall no longer fear for your days, and I shall be happy in seeing you. Oh, is this true, what you say? Yes. Oh, then some pledge of your indulgence, some object which came from you, and may remind me that I have not been dreaming, something you have worn, and that I may wear in my return, a ring, a necklace, a chain. Will you depart? Will you depart, if I give you that you demand? Yes. This very instant? Yes. You will leave France? You will return to England? I will. I swear to you. Wait, then wait. Anne of Austria re-entered her apartment and came out again almost immediately holding a rosewood casket in her hand, with her cipher encrusted with gold. Here, my lord, here, said she. Keep this in memory of me. Buckingham took the casket and fell a second time on his knees. You have promised me to go, said the queen. And I keep my word. Your hand, madame, your hand, and I depart. Anne of Austria stretched forth her hand, closing her eyes and leaning with the other upon Estefania, for she felt that her strength was about to fail her. Buckingham pressed his lips passionately to that beautiful hand, and then rising, said, Within 6 months, if I am not dead, I shall have seen you again, madame, even if I have to overturn the world. And faithful to the promise he had made, he rushed out of the apartment. In the corridor, he met Madame Bonacieux, who waited for him, and who, with the same precautions and the same good luck, conducted him out of the Louvre. End of chapter 12. Recording by John Van Stan, Savannah, Georgia. Chapter 13 of the D'Artagnan Romances, Volume 1, The Three Musketeers by Alexandre Dumas, translated by William Robson. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Monsieur Bonacieux. There was in all this, as may have been observed, one personage concerned, of whom, notwithstanding his precarious position, we have appeared to take but very little notice. This personage was Monsieur Bonacieux, the respectable martyr of the political and amorous intrigues which entangled themselves so nicely together at this gallant and chivalric period. Fortunately, the reader may remember, or may not remember. Fortunately, we have promised not to lose sight of him. The officers who arrested him conducted him straight to the Bastille, where he passed trembling before a party of soldiers who were loading their muskets. Thence, introduced into a half-subterranean gallery, he became, on the part of those who had brought him, the object of the grossest insults and the harshest treatment. The officers perceived that they had not to deal with a gentleman, and they treated him like a very peasant. At the end of half an hour or thereabouts, a clerk came to put an end to his tortures, but not to his anxiety, by giving the order to conduct Monsieur Bonacieux to the chamber of examination. Ordinarily, prisoners were interrogated in their cells, but they did not do so with Monsieur Bonacieux. 2 guards attended the mercer, who made him traverse a court and enter a corridor in which were 3 sentinels, opened a door, and pushed him unceremoniously into a low room where the only furniture was a table, a chair, and a commissary. The commissary was seated in the chair and was writing at the table.
The two guards led the prisoner toward the table, and upon a sign from the commissary, drew back so far as to be unable to hear anything. The commissary, who had till this time held his head down over his papers, looked up to see what sort of person he had to do with. This commissary was a man of very repulsive mien, with a pointed nose, with yellow and salient cheekbones, with eyes small but keen and penetrating, and an expression of countenance resembling at once the polecat and the fox. His head, supported by a long and flexible neck, issued from his large black robe, balancing itself with a motion very much like that of the tortoise thrusting his head out of his shell. He began by asking Monsieur Bonacieux his name, age, condition, and abode. The accused replied that his name was Jacques-Michel Bonacieux, that he was 51 years old, a retired mercer, and lived Rue des Fossoyeurs, No. 14. The commissary then, instead of continuing to interrogate him, made him a long speech upon the danger there is for an obscure citizen to meddle with public matters. He complicated his exordium by an exposition in which he painted the power and the deeds of the Cardinal, that incomparable minister, that conqueror of past ministers, that example for ministers to come, deeds and power which none could thwart with impunity. After this second part of his discourse, fixing his hawk's eye upon poor Bonacieux, he bade him reflect upon the gravity of his situation. The reflections of the mercer were already made. He cursed the instant when Monsieur Laporte formed the idea of marrying him to his goddaughter, and particularly the moment when that goddaughter had been received as Lady of the Linen to Her Majesty. At bottom, the character of Monsieur Bonacieux was one of profound selfishness mixed with sordid avarice, the whole seasoned with extreme cowardice. The love with which his young wife had inspired him was a secondary sentiment, and was not strong enough to contend with the primitive feelings we have just enumerated. Bonacieux indeed reflected on what had just been said to him.
"But, Monsieur Commissary," said he calmly, "believe that I know and appreciate more than anybody the merit of the incomparable eminence by whom we have the honor to be governed."
"Indeed?" asked the commissary with an air of doubt.
"If that is really so, how came you in the Bastille?" "How I came there, or rather why I am there," replied Bonacieux, "that is entirely impossible for me to tell you, because I don't know myself, but to a certainty it is not for having, knowingly at the least, disobliged Monsieur the Cardinal."
"You must nevertheless have committed a crime, since you are here and are accused of high treason."
"Of high treason?"
cried Bonacieux, terrified.
"Of high treason? How is it possible for a poor mercer, who detests Huguenots and who abhors Spaniards, to be accused of high treason? Consider, monsieur, the thing is absolutely impossible."
"Monsieur Bonacieux," said the commissary, looking at the accused as if his little eyes had the faculty of reading to the very depths of hearts, "you have a wife?"
"Yes, monsieur,"
replied the mercer in a tremble, feeling that it was at this point affairs were likely to become perplexing.
"That is to say, I had one."
"What? You had one? What have you done with her, then, if you have her no longer?"
"They have abducted her, monsieur."
"They have abducted her? Ah!" Bonacieux inferred from this "ah" that the affair grew more and more intricate. "They have abducted her," added the commissary. "And do you know the man who has committed this deed?"
"I think I know him."
"Who is he?"
"Remember that I affirm nothing, Monsieur the Commissary, and that I only suspect."
Whom do you suspect? Come, answer freely.
Monsieur Bonacieux was in the greatest perplexity possible. Had he better deny everything or tell everything? By denying all, it might be suspected that he must know too much to avow. By confessing all, he might prove his good will. He decided, then, to tell all.
"I suspect," said he, "a tall, dark man of lofty carriage, who has the air of a great lord. He has followed us several times, as I think, when I have waited for my wife at the wicket of the Louvre to escort her home."
The commissary now appeared to experience a little uneasiness.
"And his name?"
said he.
"Oh, as to his name, I know nothing about it, but if I were ever to meet him, I should recognize him in an instant. I will answer for it, were he among 1,000 persons."
The face of the commissary grew still darker.
"You should recognize him among 1,000, say you?"
continued he.
"That is to say,"
cried Bonacieux, who saw he had taken a false step.
"that is to say—"
"You have answered that you should recognize him,"
said the commissary.
"That is all very well, and enough for today. Before we proceed further, someone must be informed that you know the ravisher of your wife."
"But I have not told you that I know him,"
cried Bonacieux in despair.
"I told you, on the contrary—"
"Take away the prisoner,"
said the commissary to the two guards. "Where must we place him?" demanded the chief.
"In a dungeon."
"Which?"
"Good Lord, in the first one handy, provided that it is safe,"
said the commissary with an indifference which penetrated poor Bonacieux with horror.
"Alas, alas!"
said he to himself.
"Misfortune is over my head. My wife must have committed some frightful crime. They believe me her accomplice, and will punish me with her. She must have spoken. She must have confessed everything. A woman is so weak. A dungeon, the first he comes to. That's it. A night is soon past, and tomorrow to the wheel, to the gallows. Oh, my God, have pity on me."
Without listening the least in the world to the lamentations of Monsieur Bonacieux, lamentations to which, besides, they must have been pretty well accustomed, the two guards took the prisoner each by an arm and led him away, while the commissary wrote a letter in haste and dispatched it by an officer in waiting. Bonacieux could not close his eyes, not because his dungeon was so very disagreeable, but because his uneasiness was so great. He sat all night on his stool, starting at the least noise, and when the first rays of the sun penetrated into his chamber, the dawn itself appeared to him to have taken funereal tints. All at once he heard his bolts drawn and made a terrified bound. He believed they were come to conduct him to the scaffold, so that when he saw merely and simply, instead of the executioner he expected, only his commissary of the preceding evening, attended by his clerk, he was ready to embrace them both.
"Your affair has become more complicated since yesterday evening, my good man, and I advise you to tell the whole truth, for your repentance alone can remove the anger of the Cardinal."
"Why, I am ready to tell everything,"
cried Bonacieux.
"at least all that I know. Interrogate me, I entreat you."
"Where is your wife in the first place?"
"Why, did I not tell you she had been stolen from me?"
"Yes, but yesterday at 5 o'clock in the afternoon, thanks to you, she escaped."
"My wife escaped?"
cried Bonacieux.
"Oh, unfortunate creature! Monsieur, if she has escaped, it is not my fault, I swear."
What business had you, then, to go into the chamber of Monsieur d'Artagnan, your neighbor, with whom you had a long conference during the day?
Ah, yes. Monsieur Commissary, yes, that is true, and I confess that I was in the wrong. I did go to Monsieur d'Artagnan's.
What was the aim of that visit?
To beg him to assist me in finding my wife. I believed I had a right to endeavor to find her. I was deceived, as it appears, and I ask your pardon.
And what did Monsieur d'Artagnan reply?
Monsieur d'Artagnan promised me his assistance, but I soon found out that he was betraying me.
You impose upon justice. Monsieur d'Artagnan made a compact with you, and in virtue of that compact put to flight the police, who had arrested your wife, and has placed her beyond reach.
Monsieur d'Artagnan has abducted my wife? Come now, what are you telling me?
Fortunately, Monsieur d'Artagnan is in our hands, and you shall be confronted with him.
By my faith, I ask no better,
cried Bonacieux.
I shall not be sorry to see the face of an acquaintance.
Bring in Monsieur d'Artagnan,
said the commissary to the guards. The two guards led in Athos.
Monsieur d'Artagnan,
said the commissary, addressing Athos,
declare all that passed yesterday between you and Monsieur.
But,
cried Bonacieux,
this is not Monsieur d'Artagnan whom you show me.
What? Not Monsieur d'Artagnan?
exclaimed the commissary.
Not the least in the world,
replied Bonacieux.
What is this gentleman's name?
asked the commissary.
I cannot tell you. I don't know him.
How? You don't know him?
No.
Did you ever see him?
Yes, I have seen him, but I don't know what he calls himself.
Your name,
replied the commissary. Athos, replied the Musketeer.
But that is not a man's name. That is the name of a mountain,
cried the poor questioner, who began to lose his head.
That is my name,
said Athos quietly.
But you said that your name was D'Artagnan.
Who? I?
Yes, you.
Somebody said to me, "You are Monsieur d'Artagnan." I answered, "You think so?" My guards exclaimed that they were sure of it. I did not wish to contradict them. Besides, I might be deceived.
Monsieur, you insult the majesty of justice.
Not at all, said Athos calmly.
You are Monsieur d'Artagnan.
You see, monsieur, that you say it again.
But I tell you, Monsieur Commissary,
cried Bonacieux in his turn,
there is not the least doubt about the matter. Monsieur d'Artagnan is my tenant, although he does not pay me my rent. And even better on that account, I ought to know him. Monsieur d'Artagnan is a young man, scarcely 19 or 20, and this gentleman must be 30 at least. Monsieur d'Artagnan is in Monsieur Dessessart's guards, and this gentleman is in the company of Monsieur de Tréville's Musketeers. Look at his uniform, Monsieur Commissary. Look at his uniform.
That's true,
murmured the commissary.
Pardieu, that's true.
At this moment the door was opened quickly, and a messenger introduced by one of the gatekeepers of the Bastille gave a letter to the commissary.
Ah, unhappy woman,
cried the commissary.
How? What do you say? Of whom do you speak? It is not of my wife, I hope.
On the contrary, it is of her. Yours is a pretty business."
"But,"
said the agitated mercer,
"do me the pleasure, monsieur, to tell me how my own proper affair can become worse by anything my wife does while I am in prison?"
"Because that which she does is part of a plan concerted between you, of an infernal plan."
"I swear to you, Monsieur Commissary, that you are in the profoundest error, that I know nothing in the world about what my wife had to do, that I am entirely a stranger to what she has done, and that if she has committed any follies, I renounce her, I abjure her, I curse her."
"Bah!" said Athos to the commissary.
"If you have no more need of me, send me somewhere. Your Monsieur Bonacieux is very tiresome."
The commissary designated by the same gesture Athos and Bonacieux. "Let them be guarded more closely than ever."
"And yet," said Athos with his habitual calmness, "if it be Monsieur d'Artagnan whom is concerned in the matter, I do not perceive how I can take his place."
"Do as I bade you," cried the commissary, "and preserve absolute secrecy. You understand?"
Athos shrugged his shoulders and followed his guards silently, while Monsieur Bonacieux uttered lamentations enough to break the heart of a tiger. They locked the mercer in the same dungeon where he had passed the night, and left him to himself during the day. Bonacieux wept all day, like a true mercer, not being at all a military man, as he himself informed us. In the evening, about 9 o'clock, at the moment he had made up his mind to go to bed, he heard steps in the corridor. These steps drew near to his dungeon. The door was thrown open, and the guards appeared. "Follow me," said an officer who came up behind the guards.
"Follow you?"
cried Bonacieux.
"Follow you at this hour? Where, my God?"
"Where we have orders to lead you."
"But that is not an answer."
"It is nevertheless the one we can give."
"Oh, my God, my God!"
murmured the poor mercer.
"Now, indeed, I am lost."
And he followed the guards who came for him, mechanically and without resistance. He passed along the same corridor as before, crossed one court, then a second side of a building. At length, at the gate of the entrance court, he found a carriage surrounded by 4 guards on horseback. They made him enter this carriage. The officer placed himself by his side. The door was locked, and they were left in a rolling prison. The carriage was put in motion as slowly as a funeral car. Through the closely fastened windows, the prisoner could perceive the houses and the pavement. That was all. But true Parisian as he was, Bonacieux could recognize every street by the milestones, the signs, and the lamps. At the moment of arriving at St. Paul, the spot where such as were condemned at the Bastille were executed, he was near fainting and crossed himself twice. He thought the carriage was about to stop there. The carriage, however, passed on. Farther on, a still greater terror seized him on passing by the cemetery of St. Jean, where state criminals were buried. One thing, however, reassured him. He remembered that before they were buried, their heads were generally cut off, and he felt that his head was still on his shoulders. But when he saw the carriage take the way to La Grève, when he perceived the pointed roof of the Hôtel de Ville, and the carriage passed under the arcade, he believed it was over with him. He wished to confess to the officer, and upon his refusal uttered some pitiable cries, that the officer told him that if he continued to deafen him thus, he should put a gag in his mouth. This measure somewhat reassured Bonacieux. If they meant to execute him at La Grève, it could scarcely be worth while to gag him, as they had nearly reached the place of execution. Indeed, the carriage crossed the fatal spot without stopping. There remained, then, no other place to fear but the Traitor's Cross. The carriage was taking the direct road to it. This time there was no longer any doubt. It was at the Traitor's Cross that lesser criminals were executed. Bonacieux had flattered himself in believing himself worthy of St. Paul or of the Place de Grève. It was at the Traitor's Cross that his journey and his destiny were about to end. He could not yet see that dreadful cross,
but he felt somehow as if it were coming to meet him. When he was within 20 paces of it, he heard a noise of people, and the carriage stopped. This was more than poor Bonacieux could endure. Depressed as he was by the successive emotions which he had experienced, he uttered a feeble groan which might have been taken for the last sigh of a dying man, and fainted. End of chapter 13. Recording by John Van Stan, Savannah, Georgia.
And so, the mission is set. D'Artagnan now knows the full, dangerous truth of the Queen's secret and the 12 diamond studs. He has met the powerful Duke of Buckingham and has been given a task of utmost importance. But the Cardinal's eyes are everywhere. The man from Meung, the sinister Rochefort, has been spotted again, and D'Artagnan's own landlord has become an enemy agent. How will our young hero navigate this web of spies to complete his mission? Join us in our next video as the perilous journey to England begins.